Hello everyone, this is part 5 on how to make a racing game in Scratch. In this tutorial, I will be improving and reorganizing the code and adding a minimap. If you haven't seen parts 1 through 4 yet, check them out, links are in the description below. Anyways, let's get started. So first off, I want to sort of clean up these variables over here, because as you can see, there are a lot of them, and it looks very unorganized. So most of these variables here are just for a single sprite. So we can just set a lot of these to for this sprite only. And this way, whenever we see the variables on a particular sprite, we only see the variables that are relevant. So let's just go through the sprites one by one and then set whatever variables to for the sprite only. So let's start with our racecar sprite. And let's see, I don't think the x velocity, y velocity, speed, deceleration multiplier, or grass speed multiplier are used anywhere else in any of the other sprites. Let me just double check. Yeah, they aren't. So that means I can set all of these for the sprite only. So unfortunately, there is no easy way to change this setting on an existing variable. So I'm going to have to create a new variable and then replace the new one with all uses of the old one. So let's start with the x velocity variable. I'm just going to create a new one and then call it x velocity, but with the x capitalized. And then I'm going to select for the sprite only. And I'm going to click OK. Alright, so now we're just going to replace all of the lowercase x velocities with our uppercase x velocities. So right here, let's select our uppercase one, and then let's see. Is there anywhere else? Okay, over here, uppercase x velocity. And over here, let's right click and then change it to uppercase x velocity. And then here, uppercase, here, uppercase, right here. Alright, so that should be fine. And now if we delete our lowercase x velocity, that should be okay. Alright, now let's do the same with our y velocity. So let's create a new variable and then call it capital y velocity, or y velocity with a capital Y. And then instead, let's select for this sprite only. Click OK. Now let's replace all of the lowercase y velocities. So right here, over here, over here, and over here, and over here. Yep. And now we can delete our lowercase y velocity. Okay. Now let's do the same thing for our speed. So I'll call it speed with a capital S, and then select for the sprite only. Click OK. Change this to capital speed. Let's see. Okay. Here, capital speed, capital speed, capital speed. Alright. That seems fine. Oops, okay, I think I missed one. Right here, capital speed. Okay, let's go down here. Capital speed, and then capital speed. Alright, now we can delete our lowercase speed variable. Okay, next up is our deceleration multiplier. So for this one, I'm going to just do a lowercase d, so deceleration multiplier. And then select for the sprite only, click OK. And then let's replace all of our capital deceleration multipliers. Alright, so lowercase ones. Let's see, is there anything else? Okay, over here. So replace this one. Lowercase right here. Lowercase, lowercase. Alright, after we're done, we can delete our uppercase deceleration multiplier. And if we want to go back to the original variable name, of course we can just right click and then rename the variable back to our original name. So capital D deceleration multiplier, and then click OK. And that should be fine. Alright, next one is grass speed multiplier. So lowercase grass speed multiplier. Select for the sprite only. Click OK. Replace all of the capital grass speed multipliers. So let's see. Okay, over here. Okay, that looks fine. And that looks fine too. Alright, now we can delete our capital grass speed multiplier and then rename this back to capital grass speed multiplier. Alright, and let's see. I think we can also change our acceleration and max speed variables to for the sprite only. So let's do that. Let's create a lowercase acceleration. Select for the sprite only. Click OK. Replace all of the capital ones with the lowercase ones. Okay. Over here. Oops. Let me just duplicate this back. Alright. Let's see. Any over here? Nope. Okay, let's go down. And that should be fine. Okay, now we can delete our capital acceleration and then rename the lowercase one back to capital. Alright, and now for max speed, so lowercase max speed, select for the sprite only, click OK, and replace all the capital ones to lowercase. So max speed, let's see, max speed, okay, and that should be fine. So delete our capital one, rename to lowercase, or back to capital. Alright, our speed multiplier variable can be also for the sprite only. So let's create our speed multiplier variable with a lowercase s. Okay, select for the sprite only, click OK, and then replace all of the capital ones with the lowercase one. So like this, and then like this. Let's see. Okay, replace these. Okay. And that should be fine. So delete our capital one, and then rename back to the capital one. Alright, so now as you can see, let's say if we switch to another sprite, then all the variables that were in the car now disappear, and we have much less variables shown on our variables area over here. So yeah, now let's go to our track sprite. And there isn't anything private in the track sprite, so we can skip that. Now let's go to our starting line sprite. And let's see. This seems fine too, so we can skip that too. And now for our checkpoint sprite, let's see. I think all the variables in the checkpoint sprite are fine. And now let's go on to our lap sprite. And we have our has race ended variable. That should be for all sprites. So that should be fine. Now let's go to our number counter sprite. And yeah, I think that's all of the variables. So pretty much all of the variables that I set to for the sprite only were in the car. But yeah, we definitely took out like 7 or 8. So now it's much more organized. And I'm just going to go through all of the sprites again and then reorganize the variables a bit more. So I'm going to start with the race car. And what I'm thinking of doing is that I'm going to put all of the variables that are for all sprites into a single sprite. Probably the stage or something. So let's see. In the car, all of the variables set are for the sprite only. So that's fine. Let's go to our track. And okay, so it sets the scroll X and scroll Y, which are both for all sprites, inside of the track sprite. So I think I'm going to move these two into the stage. So I can now delete these, and I'll go to our stage. And under the win flag clicked, let's set our scroll X and scroll Y. Alright. Now let's see. Let's go to our starting line sprite. We can also set our lap to 0 inside of the stage. So I'll just drag that over there, then delete it. Now let's go to our stage and set the lap to 0. Okay. Let's go to our checkpoint sprite. I think for the checkpoints touched and total checkpoints, they can stay in the checkpoint sprite. But for our change lap by 1, I believe it should be in the stage sprite. So let's drag this over to the stage sprite and delete it. And this is under when I receive new lap. So if we go to our stage sprite, we have to drag in a when I receive new lap, then change lap by 1. Alright, now let's go back to our checkpoint sprite. That should be fine. Now let's go to our lap counter sprite. Okay, so we have our has race ended, and we should move this to our stage sprite. Okay. Now let's set this to no after the win flag is clicked. And now let's check our number counter sprite. And okay, so we have our time variable. Let's drag this to the stage. And let's set time to 0 over here. Alright. And that should be fine. So now all of our shared variables are initialized and updated in our stage sprite. And now they're much easier to find in the future, and they're a bit more organized. So yeah. And I'm just going to add a comment here saying that the scroll X and scroll Y sets the position of the racetrack. Alright, and that should be fine. Alright, so now moving on. By the way, I apologize if that was a bit boring, but now we can get to the fun stuff and start creating our minimap. So to do that, let's first go to our track sprite. And let's see, I'm thinking of having a copy of our track sprite on the upper right corner of the screen over here. And I'm also going to have like a dot representing the car and also like a square representing the starting line over here. So yeah, to make the minimap of the track, we have to first create a clone of myself. So let's go to events, or sorry, control, and then drag the create clone of myself block. And let's drag this before the forever loop. And now something else we have to do is that we have to separate the clone from the original sprite itself, because the clone is essentially a completely different sprite than the original sprite, so it's going to have its own blocks and actions. However, if we're creating a clone of the original sprite, the clone's going to do whatever the original sprite's going to do. And in this case, the original sprite's always going to go to scroll X times -1 and scroll Y times -1. However, we don't want the clone to do this because we just want the clone to stay on the upper right corner of the screen. So to help solve this problem, we could just create a new sprite and then copy the costume and then, code our own thing. But that's not as efficient because if we, let's say, change the costume of the track, then we also have to copy over the new updated costume for our minimap. So instead, what we're going to do is that we're going to create a new variable, and let's call this is original racetrack. Alright, and let's select for this sprite only. This is very important. So select for this sprite only, and then click OK. Alright, and what we're going to do is that we're going to first set is original racetrack to yes, and then we're going to create clone of myself, and then we're going to set is original racetrack back to no after we're done creating the clone. So what this does is that the clone is going to have the variable is original racetrack set to yes, while the original sprite is going to have the variable is original racetrack set to no. Oh wait, oops, sorry, I should switch these. So I'll set this to no, and then set this to yes. So the clone is going to have the variable is original racetrack set to no, and then the original sprite is going to have is original racetrack set to yes. And that makes sense, right? Because the clone is not the original racetrack, while the original sprite is the original racetrack. So now that we have that down, in our forever loop, since we don't want the clone to do this, we can just do or check if the original racetrack is yes, then we do this. Otherwise, if it's no, that means we're talking about the clone, and we don't want the clone to do that. Instead, for the clone, let's grab a when I start as a clone inside of the control. So when I start as a clone, let's of course make it much smaller. So let's go to looks and then set its size to something maybe to 20%. Let's see how that looks. Okay, our clone is right here, as you can see. 20% looks fine, I think. Oops, let me try dragging it. Okay, so I think 20% over here looks pretty good. Okay, I think we can keep it at 20%. So let's set the size to 20. And then let's just make it go to this position. So that would be go to x -60 and then y +80. Alright. So now we have our racetrack for the minimap. And oops, doesn't seem to be going over there. So let me try adding a forever loop around here. And oh yeah, that's because that's not the correct position for the mini racetrack. So let's see. Let's try making it go to +230. Okay, maybe +200. Maybe 190. Okay, and then y position maybe 150, 130, 135. Okay, that's better. Alright, now we can delete our forever loop. Okay, so now that we have our real position of the minimap track, we can now create the marker for our car inside of the minimap. So let's go to our car sprite. And what we're going to do is that we're going to also create a clone of the car, the same way that we created the clone of the racetrack. So let's go to Control, and then drag a create clone of myself. And let's also go to variables, create a new variable, and call it is original racecar. Alright, and then select for this sprite only, and then click OK. Alright, and now, before the clone is created, let's set is original racecar to no, because it's going to be the clone, but then after, let's set it to yes. Alright, now let's drag this right before the forever loop, and that should be fine. Okay, and now that we have a clone of the race car, let's go to Control again, and then drag a when it starts a clone. And we want sort of a marker for the car, so I'm going to go to Costumes, and then create a new costume. And I'm just going to paint like a single dot. So like right here. And I'm just going to change the color to a red color. Now this is going to be our marker for the car. Now let's go back to our code. And when it starts a clone, the clone is going to switch costume to the marker costume, which is costume 2, while the original sprite is going to switch to costume 1, because that's the costume of the real car. So let's put this here, I guess. Okay. And for now, let's just see if our marker shows up. So our marker, oh, why is our car so large? That's weird. Okay, there it is. Okay, so for our marker, where is our marker? Oh yeah, it's right here. I'm not sure if you can see it, but it's a tiny circle in the middle of this screen right here. But yeah, there's our marker. So now we want to make the marker go to the minimap based on the real car's position on the real racetrack. So to do that, it's a bit more complicated, but first off, let's just grab a forever loop and drag this under the when it starts as a clone. And let's first make the marker go to the front layer, because we want the marker to be in front of everything else, which is including the track and other stuff. So let's go to looks and then drag a go to front layer. Let's put it inside of the forever loop, I guess. And then let's set the size to maybe 200%. Alright. And now let's drag a go to XY. And we want the marker to move based on the current car's position on the actual track, which, as a reminder, is the scroll X and scroll Y. Let me just show the variables again. So scroll X and scroll Y. So right now it's 60, negative 80, but let's say if we go upwards, our scroll Y is going to decrease, and if we go left, our scroll X is going to decrease. So we want to base the car's position on the minimap based on the scroll X and scroll Y variables, but we also want to include the position of the minimap. So first off, let's go back to our track sprite, and I'm just going to actually create two new variables, one called map size, I guess. So map size, and then click OK. And I'm going to create one more called minimap size. So of course the map size is going to be the size of the actual racetrack. So let's set our map size, our map size to our current size that we set of the real track. So in my case, it's 600%, but in your game, it might be larger or smaller depending on what you set it to. So I'm going to set mine to 600, and then I'm going to drag this before the set size to 600%. Now I'm just going to drag the map size variable and then put it inside of the set size, and that should be fine. Now for the minimap size, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to set the minimap size to whatever size I have in here, which in my case is 20%, and then set it before the set size to block, and then drag the minimap size variable inside of the set size to block. Alright, and now we also need the position of the minimap. So let's create two more variables, and I'm going to call this minimap offset X. Click OK. And also one more, and I'm going to call it minimap offset Y, and then click OK. Alright, so I'm going to first hide all these variables. Alright. And similar to how I set the map size and stuff like that, I'm going to set the minimap offset X to whatever X number I have here, which is 190, and then drag this before they go to XY, and then also set the minimap offset Y to whatever Y value I have over here, which is 135, and then drag this before they go to XY, and then I'm going to drag the variables minimap offset X into the X value here, and then the minimap offset Y into the Y value over here. Alright, so essentially what we did is that we converted all of the necessary values of the minimap into variables. And now we can go back to our race car sprite. So what we're going to do here is that we want to first set its position to scroll X and scroll Y. And remember, we're going to be putting all of this into the go to XY. So for our race car marker, we're going to set its X position to scroll X and scroll Y times the ratio of the size of the minimap compared to the actual map size. So let's drag the minimap size variable, and let's also drag the map size variable, and let's go to operators and grab a divided by operator, and I'm going to drag this minimap size into the left side and then drag the map size variable into the right side. So this divides the sizes of the minimap by the actual map size, and let's multiply this by the scroll X. So let's drag the scroll X onto the left side, and then this onto the right side. And what this does is that, let's say our minimap is 1/10 the size of our actual racetrack. If the race car moves, let's say, 50 units upwards, then the race car on the minimap is going to move 50 times 1/10, which is 0.1, which is and then equal to 5 units upwards. So this just correctly scales down the movement of the car. So now that we have that, we want to make sure that all of this is happening on the top right of the screen, where the minimap is. So to do that, let's grab an addition operator, and then drag all of this onto the left side, and then go to variables, and then drag our minimap offset X variable onto the right side. And now this entire thing also includes the position of the minimap. So now let's drag this onto the go to X, and for the go to Y, let's just right click, duplicate, and then replace all these variables, or actually just 2 of them, with the Y version of the variable. So let's replace the scroll X with scroll Y, and then minimap offset X with minimap offset Y. Alright, now let's drag this back into the Y value of the go to XY. Oops. Alright, and that should be fine. Okay, so here we have it. We have the go to X, Y, and each of them which first gets the ratio of the size to the minimap to the actual map size, and then multiplies by the position of the car in the real map, and then adds the minimap offset X and Y. Alright, so let's test it out. Okay, so as you can see, we have our marker right here. And if we go along the track, then the marker should move along the minimap as well. And as you can see, the marker is moving along the minimap like that. Alright, cool. So it's like this, and yeah, it works. So I think the minimap is behind the actual track. So let me just first go to the track sprite and make sure that when the clone is created, let's go to looks and then go to front layer. Alright, let's try it again. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So it's a bit hard to see, but for right now it's fine. So yeah, there is our minimap. And now one more thing that we're missing is, of course, the starting line. So for the starting line, it's actually pretty similar, except that it's much easier to code since the starting line is not going to be moving on the track. So for our starting line, I think I'm going to go to the costumes, and I'm going to duplicate this costume and create a new one for the starting line inside of the minimap, because I think this is a bit too wide. So I'm going to delete probably half of these squares, like this, alright, and then recenter it. And then I'm going to make this much smaller, so maybe this big. Okay, now let's go back to the code. And as the same way as how we created the clones for the race car and the map, we have to create a new variable and then call this is original starting line, and then select for the sprite only. Again, this is very important. And then click OK. And then when the flag is clicked, set is original starting line to no. And then go to control, create clone of myself, and then set is original starting line to yes. Now let's drag this right after the when flag clicked. Oh yeah, by the way, I should move this broadcast new lap into the stage, because this is something that the stage should call. So let's drag this into the stage sprite. Let me just do that quickly. Okay. Now in the stage, let's make sure to broadcast new lap after the when flag is clicked. Alright, there we go. But anyways, let's go back to our starting line sprite. And now, of course, for our original sprite, let's switch costume to costume 1, which is the actual costume. However, when the clone is created, let's go to control. When it starts a clone, then let's switch costume to costume 2, which is the smaller version. And then let's drag a forever loop, and let's grab a motion, go to XY, and make sure to go to the minimap offset X and minimap offset Y. And actually, I don't think we need the forever loop, so let's take this out actually. And now lastly, inside of our original starting line sprite, we need to check if, go to operators, grab an equals, if the is original starting line is equal to no, then do all of this stuff, because we don't want the clone of the starting line to be doing all of this. we want the clone to be doing this only. So yeah, now let's test it out. And okay, our original starting line costume has disappeared. That's a bit weird. Let's see. Oh yeah, I found my error. I meant to write if is original starting line is set to yes, then do all of this stuff. And now it should work. Oops. Okay, so now our starting line is now shown, but we should make it go to the front. And this should be better. Okay, now our car is not in front of the starting line, so let's make the car go to the front. Let's see. I'm going to take this out again, and let's try. Alright, but now our timer is shown behind the track, so let's go to our number counter sprite and make the timer go to front. Right here. Okay, there we go. And that should be fine. And as you can see, on our minimap, we have our starting line. And I think it's a bit too large, so I'm going to go to the costumes of the starting line sprite and decrease the size of our minimap starting line to maybe a bit smaller, like this. Okay, I think that's fine. And I'm also going to make sure that the minimap is in front, and I'm also going to make sure that the minimap starting line is in front of the minimap track. So I'm going to make sure it goes to the front layer. Okay, let's see. Still not on the front layer. Okay, so the layering isn't working as how I wanted it to be, but at least I got the minimap working. So as you can see, there is our accurate minimap on the top right corner of the game screen. Even though the layering is sort of wacky, but yeah, it's still working. So let me just first complete a lap around the track to see how it works. Of course, the real track should be behind all of that minimap stuff, but yeah. Let me see. So as you can see, we can accurately tell where our race car is on the minimap. So we're almost there to the finish line. And once we finish, we have our race complete. And there we go. And if we restart, then everything should work as normal, like that. Alright, cool. Anyways, that's it for this tutorial. There was a lot of stuff happening in this video, so if you have any questions, you can ask in my Scratch Studio, and I will be happy to help. Of course, as you can see on screen, I will definitely be adding a layering system in the next video, and possibly add a restart system. If you enjoyed this video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe too if you haven't already. Anyways, that's for this video. See ya!